We'll start this evening in our city council meeting, September 22nd of 2020. Welcome those who are in attendance with us here and those who are online. Appreciate you joining us. We'll start our meeting tonight. I guess I should excuse Council Member Barker and Council Member Severing. Due to their absence, I've asked Council Member Dalpaz to give us an invocation or a thought and then lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Council Member Dalpaz.
I'll go ahead and say an invocation. Our Heavenly Father, we are truly grateful that we get to be here as a city council and as citizens to go through these agenda items that are before us. And we ask that we can have a good spirit about us, that we'll make good decisions that are to the best of our abilities through the research that we've done and through the pondering that we've made on the items. Please bless that we can have a good back and forth conversation with those that are here, and that we can provide solutions to some of the things that are happening in the city. We're grateful for all that we have and say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Please stand up for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Council Member Dalpaz, for filling in. Council, just as a reminder, it would be nice to involve members of our community in the pledge and thought or invocation. So I just encourage you to invite those that you think would be willing to participate to do so. Going to our consent agenda now. And I would call for a conflict of interest disclosure on any conflict you see regarding the agenda tonight, real or perceived. I see none, so we'll move on to item number 2. This would be an action or a discussion to approve the July 12th, 2022 City Council meeting minutes.
I have a small correction that I wanted to make everyone aware of, which is kind of ironic because it involves my name and anyways, it says on page 2 of the packet, it says Council Member Severing identified an error in the minutes. It should say Council Member Dalpaz identified an error in the minutes. Kind of ironic.
Well, again, you're identifying an error in the minutes is what you're saying.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Double error correction. Anything else, Council Member Dalpaz or any members of the council?
That's it.
Okay, then I would look for a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
So moved by Council Member Expel.
Second.
Second by Council Member Swanson. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to item number 3 now, which is a discussion to consider approving the July 26th, 2022 City Council meeting minutes.
Just had a comment.
Go ahead, Council Member Dalpaz.
There's a small correction on item number 8, which is page 23 of the packet. It says that Council Member Swanson both motioned and seconded the item. And it should actually be that Councilman Swanson motioned and Councilman Severing was the one that seconded the motion.
Okay, make that correction.
And then also on page 29 of the packet, item 15, it in a citizen comment, it says that the citizen's name is Bob Mackley. It should actually be Bob Napoli, which is Napoli, I believe.
Okay, thank you for those corrections. Anything else, Council Member Dalpaz?
That's it.
Okay, we have a motion to approve those minutes as amended.
So moved.
So moved by Council Member Swanson.
Second.
Second by Council Member Expel. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Move item number 4 now, which is a Discussion or action to consider the August 9th, 2022 city council meeting minutes. And I'm going to beat you to the punch on this one, Councilmember Dalpass. In there where it's talking about my comments about property taxes. I said it's one of the most aggressive taxes. It should be progressive. Although they are pretty aggressive also, but they're progressive. So if that correction could be made. Anything else? With that, then suggestion for approval, we have a motion to approve the minutes of the August 9th, 2022 city council meeting.
So moved.
So moved by Councilmember Dalpaz.
Second.
Second, Councilmember Swanson. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, before I forget too, I failed to do this, but I'm appreciative that we have a member of our police force with us at our meetings and the great job that they do. So, oh, he's coming to get the praise now. All right, so we appreciate them being here. So we'll move on to item number 5 now. The presenter will be Dylan Hill, our public works inspector. He's going to talk to us about a conditional acceptance of what phase 2 subdivision. Correct.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. That is correct. White Rock Phase 2 is just below 3,100. This is all the improvements that have been installed, the road, the curb and gutter, storm drain, water, sewer are all up to the city code and standard. There are remaining improvements that need to be made, but that escrow money is still being held, and this conditional acceptance starts the warranty period for the improvements that are in, and then kind of starts the timeline for the remaining improvements. So this is a motion to give them conditional acceptance and start that timeline.
So just a question of clarification. So the improvements that aren't in, that we're holding the escrow for, is the 1-year period start when those are finished, or does it start now?
So it should be when those are the 1-year period would start now, and then as the improvements go in, it's like the sidewalk, they don't have to, there's a deferral on that for until the home is built. I don't know.
But then it's 1 year from time they.
The building, they have a bond on that as well, that covers the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Does that make sense or no?
John, I'm just asking, for the home, like, is that 1-year warranty start from the time it's installed, or does it start now? And if it's not installed in a year, there is no hold back on the escrow.
So it starts, the conditional starts for when the improvements are accepted, which is what you're doing tonight. And so those that haven't been installed yet, technically, they would be approved and accepted when the final is done. So if that final happened 12 months today, that would be the warranty period. But if it happened 18 months today, then they would go to the end of that. So it's a year or final acceptance. So I know it's kind of conditional. We don't see a lot of failures with sidewalks because of the way they're doing it now, where in fact, we prefer them to hold off the sidewalks, because otherwise they run it over with their track hose and smash it into little pieces, and it all needs to be redone anyways. So it is actually our preferred method, is to have them do it after the homes are finished.
Anything else, Dylan?
No, that's just it for this development.
So you're recommending conditional acceptance?
Yes.
We have a motion to accept that, council.
Mayor, I move that we accept conditional acceptance for the White Rock Phase 2 subdivision.
We have a motion by Councilmember Ekstrom. And second
Second.
by Councilmember Dalpaz. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. While you're up to Dylan, you want to talk to us about the, which is Patriot Point Phase 1A and 2?
Yeah, this one, another subdivision that's, down by the swimming pool and, it's a little bit different than 1A, 1B and 2. But they built 1A and then phase 2, and now they're working on 1B, so kind of confusing, but kind of 3 jobs in one, but 2 of them are finished, paved, all the improvements are up to the city code and standard, and they're trying to start the warranty period on that, so with that being the third piece not included tonight, just the 2 that are done, so
How's ADA compliance looking, Dylan?
that's down on the flat, so it's perfect. Is when you go up to the hills that create a very large problem, so.
We appreciate you being on top of that. All right, any questions for Dylan? Recommending a conditional acceptance of Patriot Point Phase 1A and 2. We have a motion.
Mayor, I motion that we accept the conditional acceptance for Patriot Point Phase 1A, 1B, and 2 subdivision.
1A, just 1A.
I thought that you said, okay,
Yeah, that one's still being built right now.
okay,
They would love
excuse
that,
me,
but-
then I will say I motion that we accept the conditional acceptance for Patriot Point Phase 1A and 2.
Thank you, Councilmember Dawkins. Second by Councilmember Swanson. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to item number 7
Dylan.
on our agenda, which is public comments. I would just remind you to come up to the podium. Please state your name if you're a resident of North Ogden, and please limit your comments to no longer than 5 minutes.
Bob Buswell, 962 East, 3025 North. I'm not sure what the expense would be, and I know that it's been talked about a long time ago. But I was wondering about having more use for the swimming pool. I think it's called the beluga that goes over the swimming pool. And you could have water aerobics year round, as long as also early morning swim and public swim. And also Weaver High School swimming team would be able to practice there instead of going to Ben Lomond. I just was wondering what each of you thought about that.
Well, we probably won't respond during public comments, but you brought it to our attention, and I know it's been a discussion. So we'll have discussion on that as appropriate in the budget. I think that's an RDA issue down there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sandy Cochran, I'm a resident of North Ogden. I have a few comments and questions, and they all pertain to the presentation for Village of Prominence Point. I want to start off firstly, thanking the developers for giving us so many more features than what we had before. I've looked over the plans online, and I see 3 playgrounds. And before seeing that, we had 0 playgrounds. There are 2 dog parks that I see. There's lots of additional parking down by the patio homes, which has become a huge issue over the past couple of months. Parking's just, I mean, there's almost fighting in the streets over there because of it. So we're definitely grateful for all that. I'm wondering if the city has received, and if they're willing to share any plans that are more detailed than what we see online. We're interested in what the inside of the clubhouse looks like, what the playgrounds are going to entail, and the park that's down next to the creek where the 3 empty lots were. If that's just going to be landscaping, if there's going to be seating there or whatever. And then, we're wondering when we can anticipate the separate HOAs being turned over. So there's one for the townhomes, one for the patio homes, the apartments. I'm not worried about the commercial and the master, but so the townhomes, aside from the 12 that are still planned to be built, the other ones, I think they're all sold and occupied. So I'm wondering why that and why the patio home HOAs are not in the process of being turned over to the homeowners. One more area is, in reading through the amendment, it states that the first clubhouse doesn't have to be complete until the 5th apartment building has received its occupancy permit. And the last time you all were here, you committed to starting that clubhouse right away. And we're just hoping we can get a commitment from you that is still your position, that you're going to start that right away and not wait until the 5th apartment building is complete. And might save you a little bit of money to do that too, because the weeds over there are already over 12 inches again. So you wouldn't have to track down that farmer and have him come out with his tractor again. And the only other thing I have is I'm wondering if there's any other retail that's been identified, or if there's been any contracts or anything done along those lines. Thank you.
Well, we have the developer with us tonight, so maybe they'll address those questions when they talk about us and Brenda?
Brenda Ashdown, I live in North Ogden. I'm not as prepared as she is. I just have a question, and I know that you don't necessarily like to answer during these public comments, but I'm hoping you will teach me something. You only have 3 members here. If there's how many members does it take to have a vote? 3. What if 2 vote one way and 1 vote the other way? Then the mayor still votes and breaks the tie, or so how does that work?
It depends on the issue. If it's an ordinance, it requires all 3 present members to be unanimous, because you have to have you have to have 3 members of the council vote in favor of anything. So I would say item 8 would qualify under that, because an amendment to a development agreement is a legislative ordinance change in our code. Item 9 would only require the majority of the council present. So 2 out of the 3 would need to vote in favor to do an vote on the surplus property question.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else like to make a comment? John, we have someone online.
We do. First is Cassidy H.
Okay, Cassidy, you'd state your name and if you're a resident.
Cassidy, try talking to me again. Looks like you're on mute on your phone or your device.
We're waiting for Cassidy. John, is there someone else?
Yeah, let's try and move to Ethan, and then we'll come back to Cassidy.
Okay, Ethan?
John, I think your light went off on this side. Yeah, you're not going.
Yeah, it's showing Ethan's microphone is muted as well. But let me see if I can. Let's try. So I just sent him a message asking him to unmute. Okay, let's try Corey Lynn. I call her.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Oh, good, you can hear me. Okay. Corey Lynn Hightola, Village of Prominence Point, couple of questions for the developer and the city council. It's been changed that the cottages are no longer age restricted. And that's what we purchased down here was age restricted cottages so we could have some peace and quiet. Now they've got, the clubhouse is great, the pool is great, and now they've added the playground. So much for 55 and older, having a quiet area. And the 12 townhomes that they're putting in are not age restricted, and they're down in the cottages area as well. Just wondering how that got changed, and is that just something that just happens? You can just switch that it was an age restricted development down on the cottages, and now too bad, that's just not what it is anymore. Another question is for the park on the 3 vacant lots. Is that going to be city or is that going to be the HOAs? Because I can see a huge public nuisance with that, with the trail that you want to put in or you're going to put in. That's going to give access to anyone that wants to, whether they're in the HOA or not, to have access to our whole development, our pool area, the playgrounds, the pickleball, everything that we're paying HOA fees for is going to have free reign to any of that from that trail. And we've got a question about Airbnbs. We have a few of the townhomes that we found out are being rented out as Airbnb. What do we have to protect us from that kind of a situation? Because you have no idea who's coming into those Airbnbs. They don't have to register. You have no clue what kind of people are coming in there. And I thought in the CCNRs that was not allowed. That and businesses were not allowed in any of the development. So I don't know how they're getting away with that. And I believe that is all of my questions, and hopefully I can get some answers.
And we'll try to have John maybe answer those at the end of the meeting. We have some
Thank
time.
you.
And see the developers taking copious notes here. So, okay, John, you want to try?
Let's see, we've got, let's see, Cassidy's got her hand raised again, so let's try Cassidy H.
Hello, can you hear me? This is actually Ethan Hale. It's Cassidy Hale's husband. I am a homeowner in the Prominence Point with in Unit 67. And if you look at the developing plans, I just recently looked over them. And one of my biggest concerns was, if you look at the distance between my townhome, Unit 67, and the apartment complex, it's saying 39 feet, which means that it's essentially not even the width of our townhome, which is not what the original developer had planned for us. That's not the reason why we bought our home. The original plan, which is still displayed on the street, has a larger grass area, pickleball courts, and I get the development has changed, but my biggest concern is that distance between the apartments and the townhomes. It's too close. I'd ask for a change. I don't know if it falls under any zoning regulations or like a change in contract or a breach of contract. But originally what I was told when I purchased my home was that that was not going to be an issue because of the distance between the parks, the pickleball courts, the pool, the clubhouse, and all of that. So that's my biggest concern.
Okay, thank you, Ethan, for your comments. Anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. John, anyone else online?
We have, Deanna Ito.
Okay, let's hear from Deanna.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh, hello. I have just a couple of questions, but first I wanted to take a minute to thank the city council and the mayor and our new developers for going on this very long journey with us. It's really appreciated. The first question that I have has to do with the streets. During the very hot summer months, we noticed some buckling in the roads. And they're being fixed right now. And who knows what else will come as far as issues with the streets. And I've noticed that some developments that involve an HOA have actually transferred ownership to the city. Cities have a tendency to have the expertise. They have their contractors into place. They know how to maintain and fix the streets. And I was just wondering if the city council and Mr. Mayor would consider having some type of transfer like that for us. Transfer of ownership with Prominence Point. That's my first question. And I realize that if this has to be answered at another time, that's fine. So I'll just move on to question 2. Just wondering if with the pool, if a greenhouse cover could be added so that the residents here at Prominence Point could actually use that pool for extended months rather than just the summer months, perhaps use the pool during fall, spring, maybe even summer months. And I realize the answer to that question would have to come later as well. So those are my only 2 questions. And I again appreciate everything that you've done. Thanks so much.
Thank you for your comments. John, do we have anyone else?
We have Susan Clemens.
Okay, let's hear from Susan.
Good evening. It's good to talk to you tonight. I am a member of the Build Barker Park Committee and wanted to let everyone know that we are planning on another project on Saturday, October 8th at the Hollow at Barker Park, and want to invite everyone. I want to do a shout out to Mayor Berube for being on site on the 17th to help out. We had a pretty good showing. And we appreciate everyone that came. I would also urge everyone that is listening to take a look at the Hollow at Barker Park. It is really fun. I took my granddaughter and a couple of her friends down last week and they loved it. So you need to take your kids or your grandkids down and let them experience this gem in North Ogden. So again, our next project will be on October 8th. We will be starting at 7:30 in the morning and we'll be leaving around 11. So if you can come for an hour or a couple of hours, bring your weed whacker and help us spruce up that hollow. We'll be planting wildflowers on the 15th also. So we have the 8th and the 15th for a couple of good projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan. And that is kind of a hidden gem that our city has. If you go down there, it's very nice. John, anyone else?
Oh, sorry, it's not. Lost my screen. No, that is it.
Anyone else here like to make a comment before we move on? All right, we will now move on to item number 8. This discussion will be led by Scott Hess, our planning director. And this is in regards to considering amendments to the development agreement and the site plan of the village at Prominence Point. So we'll hear from Scott, and then we'll allow the developer, if they would like to make some comments, to do so. Scott?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So we have before you today, again, the development agreement with the Village of Prominence Point. If you remember last, I think it was April or early May when the development agreement was amended. The developer really had worked quickly and I think efficiently with the seller of the property to get to a resolution that the city could accept that solved a number of issues with this development that we had prior. And in the months since then, in working on all of the individual exhibits for the development agreement to ultimately get those signed and recorded with the property, they determined there were a few minor tweaks. This being a project with high profile, as you can imagine, and also is shown by the number of public comments tonight. Staff elected not to utilize the master plan community zone administrative approval, the authority that's given to the planning director and the mayor for changes that constitute less than 5% on the site, and determined that these were substantive changes that really should come back to the councils for consideration. So the things that you're looking at tonight are red line items specifically in the development agreement language itself, and then a few relatively minor changes to the overall site that we've had a chance to meet with the developer on, and we can run through those. I'm not going to run through all the red lines in the development agreement. So John, I don't know if you have access to the staff report, but I'll show you the key changes. So the first page will be the new exhibit, the new site plan exhibit. Yeah, that'll work. So off of this, I'll just point out the changes that I've seen, and if there are any that I missed that we wrote down here. But the first example of this project, these buildings kind of turned in an arc. And there was, I think on the first site plan, there may have been the pickleball courts here. We had a public comment that was related to the distance of this townhome to the apartment. The apartment footprints that were in there before were the old footprints. So they're, through the development agreement, permitted a certain number of units, and they've elected to draw and design their own garden apartment that's probably slightly wider than the original one. Proximity of distance here, I don't have the two numbers back to back. It may have gotten, somewhat closer, but ultimately the overall design of that northern half of the project hasn't changed a whole lot. Where you see the building consolidation is in this central area, the courtyard. This small building was located down further, so you had 3 in a row, and the other one was over by the second clubhouse, the first clubhouse being located on the island parcel here. So the consolidation of these two buildings provides an open space next to the second clubhouse, and then it also has the effect of creating this larger central open space, this larger central court. So really all of the development, all the area of the project that opens up onto this central open space, there's really a nice unimpeded open space across this entire area that has a mix of small playgrounds and then some called out dog parks. One kind of overarching theme of the project, as I saw it from its first example all the way through this concept, is just accessibility, and staff's recommendation is to retain that. So there's a trail network that runs around the existing lodge, plans for the trail to follow along Coldwater Creek, but there is an east-west connection that the Visionary Townhomes has provided that connects the lodge trail out to this private road here. There's a piece of sidewalk that wraps these townhomes, but then there's the missing connectivity to this east-west sidewalk on the northern area of the project. So staff, in looking at that, would like to reinstate that east-west connection. I think that that's an important component in the future, getting people safely east-west through the project on a piece of sidewalk that ADA accessibility and other key factors that go out and ultimately would be, hopefully designed in concert through the commercial area and pick up the bus stop that we have out there on Washington Boulevard. That's really the main changes that we have. I believe that this now, you don't have the full exhibit list because the attachments were getting really long in the staff report. We can, bring that back and show you the full development agreement with all of the exhibits, but the exhibits that you received in here are the pieces that were missing back in April. So we have the revised landscape plan, the site plan, the building type and elevations, your overall site data. So all of those pieces that have been fleshed out that were originally talked about and agreed upon as far as moving stuff around, we have the final exhibits there. So we'll still compile those, should the council decide to approve the development agreement change, compile all those exhibits and likely present it back to you as an informational item of this is what the full development agreement looks like.
Scott, could you help me understand Ethan's comment about the distance between where his unit is and the apartments?
Yeah, John, do you have so right there, that 39 feet. So
What was his unit?
67, I think.
So Ethan's unit is here, and the width of this 24-plex building, I think in the initial site plan was a little bit thinner, narrower, and there used to be some pickleball courts here. So here's Ethan's unit, and this is actually that east-west sidewalk that I was just talking about, part of it, the connectivity through this site. So the distance here is a little bit different or closer than what he originally was looking at.
Well, what was the original distance?
That isn't a called out distance on the site plan.
John seems to have that.
I can give you a guesstimate. It was close to 60 to 70 feet previous. From what I can do, just using, Joyce might have seen me do it. I held a little piece of paper up and measured. So
it's gone from 65 to 70 feet.
to 40
Attorney measurements.
attorney measurements. Yeah.
And is that changed in this amendment or was that changed previously?
I'd have to go back to the approved one. The only thing that's changed about these buildings as presented is this third building here was originally turned.
Right.
So these wrapped this road and this is now up closer to the road.
John, do you know when that distance changed?
Well, so this is the exhibit from the approval in April or May. And so but I don't know the distance here. But it is closer here, but there's still a bocce court and a pickleball court in between the two. It doesn't give a distance.
That looks like the old floor plans to me. The new ones are just a little shaped a little bit different.
This measurement down here is 42 feet, 13. Oh, I need to make sure Ethan can't see what we're sharing. So let me share this screen. So this distance here, this 42 feet, 3.13. I mean, you're eyeballing it, but that's about the same distance across here.
Okay, I guess here's my question. Let me try to clarify that, John. At one point in time, that was 65 or 70 feet with some different type of barriers between them. When did that change from that to what we're saying is approximately 39 feet now?
In May, according to this measurement.
Yeah. That issue probably didn't come up in the discussion. So I can see Ethan's concern. I don't know, probably can't fix it, but I can see his concern. But we want to home based upon that distance and some barriers in between. Okay. Well, Scott's up here. Yeah, Scott, your recommendation on the amendments here.
I think that we still have a great project for North Ogden, so I recommend approval as presented and help these folks move on. Well, they don't have all of the pieces in place. We have received building permit review that we committed to review ahead of their subdivision for the clubhouse. So that's been reviewed by the building department, and as soon as that subdivision is done, we're ready to issue building permits. So we're seeing elements of it moving forward, which has been really positive.
Yeah, that's good. That is positive.
Yeah.
I did, as I read through the agreement, I was a little bit concerned. I thought it was fairly clear on the clubhouse.
Yeah.
In there that it was not connected to the fifth building.
Right.
I know the developer agreed to get that started, but I thought we agreed that that would start in conjunction no later than with the apartments. So as I was looking at the agreement, it still says it doesn't have to be completed until the fifth.
Right.
Building's occupied.
And the
I wonder if
council,
that's, seems like to me the council.
I think we were fine with it the other way we all agreed to.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Starts when we can't get the CO unless the clubhouse is finished.
Yeah, that was,
That's what we were.
that's what I thought we agreed to, and that's what the
All right.
council voted. No, that's,
Yeah, we have no intentions to wait. We're happy for the development agreement to be amended based on this vote, to amend it to also include that the clubhouse be finished before any CO can be issued on any of the
I
apartments.
thought that's what we agreed to.
So we're fine with that being part of the motion if it needs to be.
You call that?
Gonna bring that up.
Okay, the other thing is, I think the clarification on the 3-lot park. I mean, it's pretty vague there, and I think, you know, that question came up tonight. Is that a HOA or is that public park, or what does it consist of? Is there, talks about landscape, I think is the term in there, but we'll let you address that when you come up. Those are the two comments I had. Any questions of Scott while he's up here? Okay. Let's hear from the applicant then, or the developer on their list of, I saw the copious notes being taken, so. You'd like to comment?
Yeah.
Come up, step up there.
Yeah, I guess we can kind of tag.
Step up to the podium so people online can hear you. I appreciate it.
Take this. My name is Steve Davies, developer Greg Cronin. Steve Davies, Greg Cronin. We also have Nate here with our civil engineering that came tonight. So he's also here, who had a lot to do with the drawings and stuff. So you'll take first shot at it.
Just to say about the clubhouse,
and the HOA comments.
yeah, it's our intent to start the clubhouse immediately. We've worked with the city to make sure that we can apply for that building permit before the subdivision was done, and they graciously,
Just so people online can hear.
and they graciously agreed so that we could go ahead with that. And so we have submitted for building permit, and we'll have that, I'm guessing within 2 or 3 weeks here. Our intent is to start that immediately, so it'll get done without any question some months before the first building will be ready for occupancy.
And just on that same note, we do have the subdivision plat, Mallard, everything ready just to turn into the city for review. That would allow us to get started.
This is a rendering of the front of the clubhouse. And to answer the question regarding that, we're glad, city has all of the plans, and we're glad to email these plans if you'd like to look at this full set of plans. We have no problem with that.
I think, John, you said those came in yesterday, maybe, or,
That's, Gary told me he's looked them over, so that's when I found out they were here.
okay, yeah.
Oh, we got comments back a week ago.
Yeah, we still want.
So a week ago yesterday. So, yeah. Regarding the
Ownership of the park.
the ownership of the park, after our meeting that we had last time, we were under the impression the city did not want to own the park, and so we've included it in our first subdivision, a 3-lot subdivision. It'll be lot 3. Show up that it'll be 3 lot, one of them being those 3 lot. The parcel will be 1 lot now. owned by the economy area. Or, I'm not sure which, there are, for clarification, it's kind of unusual, but there's a master HOA, and then there's 4 subsidiary HOAs. One for the clubhouse, I shouldn't say, one for the commercial, one for the townhomes, one for the patio homes, and one for the apartments. And we have included the new 12 townhomes in the apartment side. So, I'm sorry. Anyway, as far as the landscaping on that, again, trying to respond to the city, we didn't want to put a lot of amenities on there. We didn't want people stopping and playing in the playground or having a dog park there or anything of that nature. So we anticipated just putting some trees, 2 or 3 trees in there, some grass, and we'll maintain it with the rest of our common areas.
That'll serve as the.
Well, that was another question I had. You'll find I'm kind of like dates because I found that there's no dates and it's wide open. We surely are looking forward to working with you, but when that would be completed in conjunction with what? Because it just,
It'll be done with the clubhouse and all of the.
so we can put a date on there with the clubhouse
We're probably,
or no later than date or something.
no later than probably 8 or
Prior to the CO, the same as the other things that are on the clubhouse. I mean, we were.
Okay, we can
expecting
include
to be
that.
phase.
In today's environment, it's hard to know when somebody's gonna show up and work, but I would say easily within a year, but probably in the 8 to 10 month range.
And that park serves as the open green space for for that area down there. So you'll have that bigger area to have just an open play area. And then with people going down the trails, we anticipate the HOA would probably prefer to have a berm of bushes or something there that people can see it as they run by, go down the trail, but it's not like welcoming them into the neighborhood, that it's more of a private park to the.
Maybe a bench or something for a guy like me to.
Yeah, we've got.
stop the grass.
I think there's a bench showing on the plan.
Be on the opposite side of the berm, you can set.
But in terms of, also the question was asked, when did the HOAs get turned over? The 2 HOAs, the patio homes and the townhomes could be turned over at any time. I think the CCNR says within a certain amount of days after the last one's occupied. Then it just needs action from the owners to create a management committee to do that, and we're willing to do that at any time almost. So we can do that on the patio homes immediately because it's been in, and as soon as the last person's in, the other, we can go ahead and do that on the townhomes. So that's that. Anything else on townhomes that you have, or
Not necessarily on that I had.
now I'll let you go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. I just wanted to ask, first of all, are there any general questions from any of you? Because we need to answer those as well. Were there any other additional questions that you may have had? I know I've got the one talking about the change on the dimension on that one spot, but is there anything else that came up?
Let me check with the council, see if they have some. Looks like council member Swanson has a few questions.
It's just in reference to the question that was asked about Airbnb rentals. John, I don't believe there's a city ordinance banning Airbnb. Is that correct?
That's correct. There is one in the works where
Okay.
at this point, planning commission is recommending no Airbnbs allowed in multifamily.
Okay,
Those that are currently existing would be grandfathered or allowed to continue, but there would not be new ones allowed to submit for licenses and operate.
and so in, say, the townhome, is the townhome considered multifamily?
Any connected unit.
Yeah. So only in the non-connected units could there be an Airbnb, and then it would be,
And Scott could probably, because him and Brad have been working on the language, but I think it's any of the multifamily zones. So even these cottages would probably
okay, so it
be
would be the
disqualified as
zones
well.
themselves, okay.
Yeah.
So that would grandfather in anything that exists now. I would imagine, though, that grandfather would be contingent upon that they had obtained a business license to operate that. If they had not, then they would not be grandfathered in, correct?
So under state law, yes, you have to follow all the rules. And if you don't follow the rules, then you lose your.
Which council member Swanson, I think we have discovered, we are aware of some rentals down there that don't have licenses. Just so you know, I did check and Colleen told me if you're leasing to family, you don't have to have a license because I do have a family member there and it was willing to get a license, but we have discovered that there are some rentals down there without licenses, so probably at this point in time, we won't be issuing any licenses until the ordinance is done, John.
So, I don't know how close we are. Are we ready for a meeting with the council?
We just went last week to planning commission, so it'll be a skip a meeting at least just to get minutes and stuff back, but.
We can give you a little insight on the HOA rules that already exist if you'd like.
Yeah. Currently, we don't have any restrictions in any of the HOAs that restrict rentals. So we have prepared with the same folks that prepared the CCNRs to put some of those restrictions in. And we'd be glad to work with you, Scott, and incorporate the city's recommendations in those.
Sounds like in this situation, referencing the city's rule is probably all that's going to be necessary because it sounds like the city's going to govern that, but beyond what an HOA could do individually. So as best I can understand, it sounds like it, but
having the HOA rule, actually, HOAs aren't required to grandfather in things like the cities are. And so in theory, an HOA could vote rentals out of their HOA if all the members are on the same page.
just
Or enough of the members to change the rules.
Once you can tell we're philosophy.
no, it's okay. I think that we've talked about it because it does come up, but I think that it'd be more of a, we can give input to the city on some of the thoughts we have for general Airbnbs, but in this situation, I think that that's a problem that will be naturally remedied here shortly from a couple directions. So I think we'll just stay tuned, but we as an HOA understand that if indeed you are to do a short-term rental, you have to be within the laws of the state, which gives you certain reasons which you can and cannot do so, and to who you can. And then outside of that, you fall into the Airbnb world of general rentals. And that sounds like you're getting a plan to put in place. And we as an HOA kind of overseeing manager right now have also addressed that same concern and some language we're putting together that would remedy the issues that are currently happening. So I think we're all on the same page there.
Councilmember Swanson, do you have additional?
I do have another one on the streets comment that was made by Mrs. Ito, I believe it was, about the streets buckling and whether or not the city. My understanding is that those will necessarily remain private roads because of the width to which they were built. Is that correct, John, that they're not the city minimum width?
That's been the plan since the beginning because of snow removal issues and the width that we've kind of indicated we won't take them over.
Okay, thank you.
I do believe that was a comment that resided within council because that would be the determination of the city whether they want to agree to receive a road or not. And our situation, we had no intentions that it would be received by the city. It's been a planned development. And a lot of those do have private infrastructure. And that infrastructure there is a budget within the HOA to maintain roads. And I think what you're seeing out there as far as the current, maintenance that started to happen, is I think we're simply using the reserve HOA budgets that are assigned for that. Whereas before they were not being approved to be dispersed. So I think right now we have an adequate budget within the HOAs collected right now to maintain the infrastructure. And I think that's what you heard earlier from a couple of the people here today saying they're happy to have seen this or that happen. We're just simply using the money which the HOA has already collected for those purposes and putting it to work. So I think that will be remedied as the management continues to improve for the area. So
Excellent. Yep. Thank you.
Councilmember Dalpas?
Just to make sure some of the citizen questions were answered, I don't think we've heard yet. Sandy asked about any other retail that has been identified. So if you have anything to say there.
Currently, we have not proactively gone out to seek retail for the commercial component. We're kind of stepping through this. But as soon as we get this taken care of and our phase one going, then we'll start looking at the commercial corridor. And we'll start seeing what we would like to design and attract to that area. Because we need to do more of a study of what type of retail would be most fitting for the location and what we would attract. But we have not done that at this point in time. Naturally, we don't like to look at vacant ground just costing money. So we're trying to find a good path for the commercial.
Yeah. And then resident Corey Lynn Haitala had the question about the age restriction changing. So if you could address that. And then I'll go to my last question after that.
I don't, I know that initially it was pitched that inner circle of that area that's now the clubhouse and additional townhouse is going to be a restricted senior center type of an approach. I think if we balance the comments from the entirety of the neighborhood and everything that we've received throughout this entire process, we come to understand that, this is now something where we have reallocated that area over to the possibility of some of the units on the would be the south of this sheet that would be accessible for 55 and older with the elevators and with underground parking and other things will be there. It will accommodate that purpose within the development over there. But by putting that's something that I did not even stop to address in this particular situation. We took the parcel as it is and we've only planned for it. So we haven't interfered with anything that was already sold or approved in the areas that were already initially 55 or older. We have not changed or altered any of those uses in those areas.
John, as I recall, we had a discussion about that. Can you legally restrict anymore?
You can do up to a certain percentage, but you can't outright restrict 100% people under the age of 55, for example.
The best I can share there is that we attended only to the parcel that was yet undeveloped, uncommitted to any previous ages restrictions or anything of that nature.
Which 12 townhomes.
12 townhomes and the clubhouse area, which, I guess the 12 townhomes are going closest to the pool and the playground. So might be best they be non-seniors if they're trying to stay away from kids and playgrounds. So that might be a good buffer to have an opportunity there. So I think that's the main ones. You cover a couple of them. I think that we had the city ownership. I believe we covered, unless somebody can tell me differently.
The last one, I don't think
The only one that wasn't completely, you talked about more than we intervened or talked about was the distancing of one of the units. And we talked about Airbnb, vacant lots or private, the park areas. Did you have another one?
The last one that I don't think has been covered is Deanna Ito asked about the clubhouse pool. Is there a possibility to cover it?
I wrote down here, in fact, I put a note that would be essentially the pool covering would be something that the HOA would have to come together and to come up with a budget and a cost and whether they want to allocate that towards that expense. As a developer, we're not looking to provide a covered pool. It changes the nature of the entire amenity, but it is perfectly possible for the HOA to get together and to come to a consensus that they would like to add that through an increase in dues. At some point, you could increase your dues beyond what others who don't think the amenity can use. So there's a balance of providing it for when we do, and then whatever other things they would like to do, they're welcome to come together.
We've already got that problem, right? With
I heard it earlier today. Now, I'm in support of giving more time around pools. I think pools are very healthy and I think they're wonderful. So if the HOA comes together and enhances it, then I'm all for it. But
affordable housing, right? We already know there's a tack on to those HOA fees that are not done anywhere else, pretty much.
So I think, thank you for bringing that one back up. I did have a comment written to answer it. I just missed it there. And then I do have, just for information's sake, I'm not wishing to shy away from anything that's been discussed, but I know there's been a lawyer's calculation of dimensioning, which was brought up earlier, which I'd like to challenge in the court of law. Exactly. I think he erred on the side of generosity to the original development. I have the original one right here, and I have essentially the one that was approved in April. And the difference in the setting of specifically this building and its footprint to this 67 condo over here that had the pickleball, that had the other stuff in between them. Pickleball's 36, basically the width of the pickleball is not, but gosh, what is it, 10, 20 feet or so. When you're looking at the overall dimensioning here, they would have been much closer to this activity right out their back door, it would be shorter than 40 feet. They would have been 20 or so feet from all the activity items that were there. this right here would have had the amenities just right out the door, just about 20 feet away from this original building.
Yeah, so I was measuring from the 2017 agreement.
That's the one right here that I had.
Is that the one that's posted on the property right now?
No, I'm saying this was the one that was approved, which this maintained about the same distance we have in the new one here, between here and here. We took the pickleball and stuff out. We moved it. Essentially, we put pickleball over here, have it over here, put a little dog park in there. So we moved some of the amenities around. And this building is indeed about 10 feet wider complete than the one that was presented here. So you went from probably 50-ish down to the 40, you know, from here to here would have been probably the overall dimensional change. But it now has the green space between the two versus an actual amenity between the two. So when you
So
take,
my measurement was from the 2017 plan.
yeah, no, now measured out, I'm going about 55 on that one. You're 65 to 70. Well, I'll get back with you, but no, the point is, I didn't want to avoid the comment, is that we did, by moving amenities, we think that we ran a 40-foot buffer of green space between the two, which is, we thought was a good, generous thing to do. But as far as the approved one versus where we are now, it's pretty much the same. Within reason, but I appreciate it where it was. The original plan, the building was moved over slightly, so it's kind of looking between two buildings and not at a building. So that would change it as well. There was a little bit of an offset, so that would create the distancing opinion as well. So, but I still want to disrespect the opinion, but I do feel like the 40 feet with a non-amenity between it and green space and the things that are there will keep a pretty good opening between those two buildings.
Speaking of green space, John, we addressed the sidewalk issue where we're growing moss.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because I think this is an oversight. We have a sidewalk that is supposed to connect through to here, you know, in this area, and somehow during the process of moving things around, that sidewalk connection between the two was not there. I believe
We reinstated that, right?
yeah, that's going to be one of the ones that if you want to approve the amendment, subject to the addition of the sidewalk connecting the two sides and subject to the comment of the clubhouse being finished before the CO. I think those two are the things.
Clubhouse in the park, yeah.
Yeah, I think those are the two things that you might want to just approve based on these two things being added.
John, I was talking about the issue we have out there. I think it's the long one.
The long one.
Oh, the code enforcement issue that you were emailed, that Scott emailed Steve about last week.
Yeah, there's a leak in a pipe somewhere that we inherited, so you gotta fix that. Is that the one?
Yeah, we think Public Works has been out there and thinks it's a well or a spring or something coming up right there, because it's.
So that's one of those things you found in the will that you wish wasn't in it. So we'll have to address that, find out where the leak is and get it fixed.
Yeah, it's kind of impeding the sidewalk there. That's why I was saying it's additional green space, but not on purpose.
Moss space.
Yeah, and that's your water feature.
Yeah. Water, you're right there.
But on behalf of us, the development, we just want to thank you for your continued staff's efforts and continued communication back and forth. It's been quite rapid fire. And it's been, you know, turnaround comments and things that come back reasonable times. So it's really been, we work with a lot of cities, and this has been a good experience to get the comments back and forth and get through this as promptly as we have. So thank you so much.
I think it's good, the approach you're taking of trying to get feedback from those in the community. You can tell it's been a frustrating issue for many, but I haven't heard any comments back that this plan is not acceptable, but it's actually enhancing, I think, the green space there. So council, do you have any other questions for Scott at all? Or the developer?
So Scott, you've looked over this.
Council member Ekstrom, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Sorry about that. Be recognized, get our parliamentary procedure going here. But so you've redlined quite a few things and you've gone through and subject just the thing that sticks out is just about the sidewalk. Is there anything else that?
I don't have that, and then the two I know that the council had about timing.
The timing, okay. All right, so other than that, I think it looks good.
Okay, council, any other questions for Craig or Scott or Steve or anybody?
Thank you very much.
We do. Can I? So the things the council has talked about the amendments have all affected this section 26 that's in the ordinance or in that agreement. So I just wanted to go through these red words so that we all are in agreement what those are supposed to say. So the first one is that the clubhouse will be finished before the first apartment building gets occupancy. The same thing, one was and there's an edit. It's a typo, it said completed, it should say complete under number D or letter D. But then the same thing, this area, which is where the 3 cottages were originally planned, will be finished before the first occupancy of the apartment building. And then I've just added this last one based on Scott's comments. So this is a whole new section that says the developer will complete those sidewalk connections between the townhomes and apartment areas.
I win, John.
Tiny.
You know, we've got a good thing. I just
So-
learned that it's good to have time frames, so we're each understanding what the expectation is.
So most of the connections that we're talking about are in the next phase of apartments. So the other timeline we have out right now is the completion of the second clubhouse by the 200th apartment unit. Is that acceptable? Or
Well, you
May
wanna
I
have a
may I suggest a
here.
piece of language?
Yeah, Craig, go ahead.
Just
Come up
that
to
we
the
can
mic.
please.
Yeah, Craig, can you come up to the podium, please?
We can have the developer shall complete the sidewalk connections between the townhomes and the apartment areas as the apartments are constructed to receive the sidewalk in question. Because that way we're connecting the sidewalk as we're going through and completing the apartments. And it's not in a construction area. But that's just the way we can do it, because otherwise we'll be running over, but that's not a good idea, if everybody understands that. But we could be held to when we put in apartments that would have a connection to that area, where we would connect the sidewalk through to that part, and then when we put the next one, we would go beyond that. But I mean, till then, they would use the private inner streetways and everything to walk and to go around. I mean, it is a private street, it's intended for walking, that's why it's created the way it is, but yes, we'll still have
a guarantee on cement though, if you cracked it.
what's that?
I said you'd enhance the guarantee on cement if you cracked it, because that's the only guarantee you get with cement that it'll crack, right?
Well, yeah, you have to put the lines in the right place and plan the cracking. And that's the way you have to do sidewalks. We try to crack them in the right places.
John, have you got the language there then?
so yeah, I added that as the apartments are constructed to receive the sidewalk in question.
Okay, council, you all right with that? Is there anything else? Any further?
There was only one other typo. When we were talking about the height on the buildings, there was 5 in the original agreement. And there's 6 in this one, which was part of the approval back in May. We changed the number, but we didn't change the word from 5 to 6. So that has also been amended in the draft that will be signed.
Is there anything else, John?
Nope, that's it.
Scott, you got all the typos and all the language in there? All right, council, to continue this on, this would be agreement A14-2022. And this is an effort to approve the development agreement amendments and site plan updates for the village at Prominence Point, as has been discussed this evening. So I'd be looking for a motion.
Mayor, I move that we accept development agreement A14-2022 as outlined, updating the development agreement amendments and site plan updates for Village at Prominence Point.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Exton. Do we have a second on that motion?
Second,
Second by Councilmember Dalpez. Is there any further discussion on that issue? As a reminder, according to John, this would have to be a unanimous vote with the 3 members that are here this evening. Just keep that in mind. So I will call at this point in time then for a roll call vote. Councilmember Swanson,
Yes.
Councilmember Dalpez,
yes.
Councilmember Extra.
Yes.
All right, there you go. We'll look forward to moving forward quickly and if you would just do us a favor and make sure you're complying with the ordinance on weeds and save us a lot of grief.
You could do it quick growing.
Well, I was talking to John, and he said, you know, it's all the definition of what the height of a weed is, so. But I think we all.
Ag class, so weed is a plant that's out of place.
so,
It's okay, we contracted a couple goods, we're good.
I think we all know what it looks like, so. Thank you for your attendance this evening, and so you've got to drive home, so if you need to leave, feel free, and we look forward to a successful project there. Okay.
I'll leave this and I'll leave the plats right here.
Well, you know, one thing we didn't address is the coloring. I don't know if you noticed that. They're proposing different colors, I think, on these apartments.
We actually talked about that this afternoon, the bluish pewterish look is, we changed it from a brown to match the townhomes across the street.
So there was a change in the coloring, and I assume there was no objections to that.
No.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that nobody overlooked that. That bright pink with fluorescent lights would be really attractive, so.
We'll leave that right there for you.
Okay,
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, council, we'll move on to item number 9. This is a discussion or action to consider the declaration of surplus property located at approximately 3660 north, 600 east. Mr. Hess will be leading this discussion. I would just remind you, we addressed this issue last time. We not deferred, but we postponed that based upon asking the city to give us an overall view of all properties, so we could make a more instead of looking at this micro, we could look at it more in a macro situation. So Mr. Hess, you may want to give the council an update on that issue before they.
Got a lot of them.
Huh?
We've got a lot of them.
We do have numerous.
So sure, thank you, Mayor and Council. We had 2 of these property requests from property owners who are either occupying and or near property owned by the city. And the first one has kind of been going back and forth. That's the Keys piece with the shed and where it's located. And then another is a property owned by Willis family, and they've put some improvements on the property owned by the city. That second request came with the council asking staff to consider all property owned by the city and looking at what would be, keep forever, maybe surplus in the future or surplus today, depending on what it is. And it's kind of the direction that we've taken that. And we're working through that parcel by parcel. So in Public Works, they're working on that. There's a little delay on that with, I've been at ICS training all week, so I have done. This is my first time I've been in the building tonight. So we're waiting on that. The update is basically that Public Works is still working through individual parcels to identify what their primary use is in a handful of basic categories: road, detention basin, access parcel. And then we'll come back to you with a holistic view of parcels we think are ready to be surplus, in which case we'll bring the Willis conversation back. However, the Keys family was in front of you, and we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and there was a discussion about potentially selling that property to either one or splitting it and doing both of the property owners that are around this detention basin. And I was asked to prepare a notice of surplus of property. So what's in front of you tonight is not whether or not you will sell it, but rather whether the council will consider turning this property over and declaring it surplus property.
Scott, John, let me just ask a question. Instead of looking at these individually, it seems like we ought to have a strategy overall once we see the view of all the properties before a decision is made, so we don't piecemeal this out. John, your thoughts on that?
I think that's good, because what Scott and the Public Works folks are working on is with that list of kind of identifying what each property is used for, then it gives the ability for the company to then maybe adopt a different policy for each type of property. And so, with this being, for example, the Keys property being an access to a detention basin, it might be a different response than the property we just disposed of for the Nielsen's custard, because we didn't buy it to use it for anything. We did, we bought it for a road, and the leftover stuff, there wasn't a need for. So I think you're right, Mayor. That's a long answer to a short question.
Well, at least it's an answer. So,
Attorneys get paid by the word.
yeah, there you go. Let me, just kind of poll the council what their thoughts are. And then John, some advice, since we posted a public hearing, do we need to proceed with that?
So we would need to take comments, but we don't have to make a decision tonight. It can happen at any point in the future.
Okay. Any other thoughts other than those expressed there on the macro approach? Councilmember Swanson?
I think I agree with you and John that holding off on a decision on this particular piece tonight, it makes sense as long as the city is okay that, that there's still an encroachment going on, right? And that we're okay to allow that to continue to occur until such time as we have a policy in place for the different pieces, different types of property that may or may not be surplusable. If that's, I'll just invent a word tonight. How's that?
As long as the council's aware of the issues and you're actively discussing it, I don't see an issue delaying and allowing the encroachment.
Let me just ask a question. There was an administrative hearing on this, right? John, on this property, I believe,
Yes.
keys, there was an administrative hearing. I think there was a ruling on that. They gave them until September 1st. I mean, can we override that administrative action? Because it was my understanding that there was a hearing. I'm not sure I saw the ultimate results of that, but.
And I haven't read the decision either.
But could this council override that administrative decision?
I mean, technically, the decision is based on the rules that the council writes. And so, yes, I think that the council can essentially do a stay. And so that might be helpful in the motion tonight is, of course, that's not on the agenda for a decision. But we bring that back probably as an official stay in the
That's just,
decision.
yeah, to address Councilmember Swanson's comment here of being able to continue to allow the encroachment until the decision's made. So I guess that's my question. Can we do that when there's been an administrative decision with a time frame?
Legislative groups do that quite often. So yes, we can.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. Anything else, Councilmember Swanson?
No, other than to recommend that we take public comments and postpone this.
Councilmember Ekstrom, I think you had
Yeah,
sorry,
that-
Councilmember Dalton, but
This has been like circling around in my mind a lot, like all of the different aspects of it, all of the different types of properties we have, all of the different encroachments that we haven't even discovered yet. And so, yeah, for me, I think until we've got like a really clear picture of what's going on in all of these parcels, I don't want to make a decision about any one particular one. And I hate to, and I would say continue to allow the encroachment until we decide, because if we say, oh yeah, go tear it down, and then we change our minds and say, oh no, you can, we'll allow it, then that sucks for the Keys family. So, I again am in agreement with let's postpone it until we have a better grasp on what is actually happening in all of these little pockets of property.
I do think, Scott, we need to move on this. This item's kind of been circulating for quite a while, so if you could, if you need any resources from us or help, please let us know, because I think it's something we need to get resolved and get a policy on. So, Councilmember Dalpass.
Scott, I don't think you touched on this in your presentation, but it seems like from the staff report that I read, as of right now, it's staff's opinion that the land should not be surplus, right? Was that so I just wanted to make sure it's clear that it's staff's opinion at this point that they don't agree that the land should be surplus. So I just wanted to make sure that that's where it is right now. It could evolve for some reason, but
And that,
Let me just ask this question. I think it's your recommendation that not be sold, but just because we make it surplus property doesn't mean we have to sell it.
correct. Yeah,
So we would need to, as part of our policy, understand what we want to identify as surplus property and why. But I think, if I understand that the recommendation is not to be selling city property at this point in time, even if we declare a surplus.
correct. Yeah. And the basis for that, decision or the staff decision to say this shouldn't be a sold piece of property really is just that we don't know the full life cycle of this detention basin. So the detention basin is sized such that it's sort of like a sub-regional detention basin to accept future flow off of property developed north of here and west of the cove. So while today it's a relatively low maintenance burden, it really doesn't hold water long term. We can maintain it with small equipment. I'm a cautious landowner and a patient landowner, I guess, to say that it's to be seen in the future what we might actually need to do with this piece. And once that property is sold, if there's any landscaping planted around it, we're just going to have a more difficult time, even with a perpetual easement going in. You damage somebody's fence, tree, whatever else, you're just dealing with a liability issue there. So that's not to just say that in every case it doesn't make sense to sell, but in this case, the staff believes it's a little premature to sell based on the full life cycle of that detention basin and the relative ease of maintenance we have with the ownership of that parcel today.
Council, the other thing that I had a discussion earlier with John and Scott on is, the city's ability to maintain all these pieces. We're talking about developers cutting down weeds and citizens cutting down weeds. As you know, I'm a believer that we can't expect people to do what we're unwilling to do. So as we see this bigger picture, we should have a plan for maintenance too. So, okay. Scott, thank you very much. Thank you for you and your team's great work on looking into this, and we will look for an overall assessment here. So at this point in time, council, I would like to open the public hearing regarding this issue. The property located at 3660 North, 600 East. So at this point in time, if there are any public comments online or here, now would be the time to make those. You'd step up to the podium and state your name. And you're a resident of North Ogden. John, I believe our 5 minutes doesn't apply to public hearings. Is that correct?
I get two.
That's what I'm debating right now.
I
But
have a really quick question. I
So-
promise it won't be yours.
It can apply to the public hearings as well.
okay, so counter this being applied. Go ahead, Brent.
Brenda Ashdown, I live in North Ogden. I have a question about this property. I don't know if this is the appropriate time at a public hearing. Okay. It was my understanding, and I could be totally wrong, that whether this property was sold to the Keys or not, they're still gonna have to move their building. Is that right? No? So if it's sold to them, then they don't have to move their building. Okay.
That's what my understanding.
Okay, so, because my understanding was that even with an easement there, they would still have to move their building because it was too far into the easement. So how do we go back on bridle path years and years ago between two properties that the whole extent was given to one set of property and the other property didn't get a chance to have an opinion on it? Good question.
I mean, I missed that. I'm not sure what you were referring to.
Between my house and the house next to me was a bridle path. It was open for years and years. Then all of a sudden, the houses next to me took over the whole extent of the bridle path. We were not given a choice. As far as I know, I don't know the time here, but we weren't asked if we wanted a portion of that bridle path.
Yeah,
It's just done.
well, it's hard to change things in the past.
Yeah.
But it is our intention to kind of maybe open things up a little bit and look at them in a different light. I think the council's willing to do that.
So basically, is that what some of the property that we're talking about in excess city property is
If
things
this
like
was
that?
declared excess and sold, we would surely, there's property owners on both sides. So, you know, either it could be completely purchased or split and purchased or not even sold. But we would try to make sure we're fair, and if that was decided, that both parties could have a look at that.
So my understanding was it wasn't sold, they were just told they could move their fences. So I'm just curious on that, but I think I must be mistaken on this one. That was my question.
And we are looking at every sliver across the city.
Yeah.
Part of what Scott and his team are doing is every little
Maybe it's
bridle
still
path,
considered-
everything.
Maybe it's still considered city property.
It might be, I don't know.
It might be an encroachment on city property. That's what we're gonna find out.
We're trying to find out.
John's shaking his head that there's not.
If I remember that plat, I believe that was a private bridle path from that subdivision. The county's website won't let me pull it up, but that might have been where they got the permission from, was those individual landowners reaching an agreement.
Okay, sir.
Mayor, council, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Corey Jones. I am actually the homeowner adjacent to that property. And so I appreciate the opportunity to come speak to you about this, recognizing that there's some direction that's going forward here based on what was just discussed. But I just wanted to make a couple comments, regarding the council's consideration for potentially surplusing this public property that was originally conveyed and dedicated to the purpose of managing that retaining storm, and as Scott has indicated, really for the potential in the future, right? So, but I kind of want to give you a little history where I feel about the potential sale of this or surplusing. In the spring of last year, I contacted the Public Works Department about the maintenance of the access road that sits on that public dedicated property and the storm retention pond that it leads to. I spoke to him, I think it was Assistant Director Galvez at the time, of putting down barrier rocks to reduce the weeds. I wanted to take that on myself specifically because it was a problem. I actually have an easement on the south side of my property that I've been really kind of maintaining, spraying at times for the last 20 years. So I've taken that on as well. In visiting with the Public Works folks who came up to the property and visited with me, they shared with me that it would not be a problem, but in doing so, it'd be best to maintain the integrity of the land as it has been designed for storm runoff. And if changed, it would potentially allow water to run into my property and home. So my immediate concern of this property being surplus or provided to sell is the integrity and priority of the protection could be changed. So recognizing there are some discussions that will happen in that space. And then given that there is a storm drainage pipe that runs under this property for the purpose of ensuring proper drainage protection of the properties below, I hope the question is being asked or will be asked, will selling of this critical property that is the purpose of protecting property owners like myself and those below me won't be compromised and can be ensured. Now with that, I do want to make a statement around my concern why this proposal has come about. And it's basically based on this shed, which has less to do with selling public land for the purpose of helping maintain city property and making some money potentially, and more with circumventing holding property owners accountable for city ordinance compliance. I know this has been discussed over and over. And I'm actually shocked that I'm having this conversation a year after the city being made aware of this, particularly this issue and the fact that, as you indicated, this was resolved by September 1st. Here we are, September 27th. Something that started with my contact in Public Works about helping maintain a city access road to a retention pond that I have seen over the last 120 years be used as a fire pit, dumping ground, and an area where landscapers pilfer rocks. And a curiosity about possibly changing city ordinances when a neighbor placed a concrete slab, as you indicated, in a shed in a hole that was originally dug years ago. I am frustrated the council has decided to take this long to resolve things. That being said, I recognize that decisions have to be made. And as Councilman Severin told me on the call, sometimes information doesn't flow from one department to another. Nevertheless, based on the comments on September 13th that I actually happened to fall upon, along with Council Severin's comments to me that the proposal was being made to help create a win-win situation, as was also indicated, which I'm still not sure who is necessarily considered that win-win scenario. If it included other properties like myself, initially I have a hard time believing that, given I was never approached about the possibility of purchasing a portion of the property prior to the initial council discussion. And based on the resolution which is in the packet, there's only one homeowner being offered to sell. I'm not included in that. So the comments today definitely don't indicate that there's an option for splitting. But regardless, I went through the due diligence process to evaluate the possibility of purchasing a portion of land, including speaking with Scott Hess, who's been fantastic in this whole effort over the last year and a half. However, given that the access road and drainage pipe would remain, along with relocating underground cables and power lines, buying this sliver of land basically offers me little to no value of development. Sort of hard to extend a property and move a rock wall that I paid to have installed, and by the way, benefits this access road when there's a drainage pipe in the way. So in closing, I believe that selling of this land as surplus is not the best interest of the public. The reasons that maintaining of that critical storm drainage property would be best managed under the city. And lastly, the integrity of this offer has more to do with the best interest of one property owner and an unwillingness to support a city ordinance than of North Ogden citizens. I do ask you to consider what this opens up to future discussions. What will you say to those who have taken the steps and initiatives to understand city ordinance and property requirements prior to building and haven't been denied when applying for permits legally? What do you say to those that were found non-compliant or held accountable, and that was just indicated with the example, and financially had to take a hit to comply with the rules? What are you going to allow in the future when property owners use the excuse they didn't know? Will you consistently offer the same options to purchase dedicated city property? Why I feel strongly about this issue is because when I was in the first scenario, I took the initiative to inform myself of property laws and policies when I first built, and I wanted to expand my property that included purchasing that adjacent property in question. Not only was I offered, but above, not only to be offered the option to purchase the dedicated property that is being offered up today. So I know that I didn't have that option back in the day, and I know things changed. But again, I was going to purchase that property that was denied that because of the storm drainage issue. I know these are important reasons for the city to keep back then, and I believe we still need today.
Thank you, Corey, and thank you for staying within your 5-minute allocation. Okay. Your comments?
Oh, no.
Okay,
That is public comments.
Overlook me.
all right. Anybody else? John online,
No raised hands right now.
council, anything else?
Move to close the public hearing.
We have a motion to close the public hearing. We have a second to that motion.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Ekstrom. All in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
I.
Hi.
Any opposed? Public hearing is closed. So I think there's a resolution here that the council needs to address. This would be a resolution declaring surplus property located at approximately 3660 north, 600 east. My understanding is, council, you would like to postpone that. Do we have a motion to postpone?
Mayor, I'll move that we postpone item number 9 until such time as we have full information from Scott Hess and his team. And council has had an opportunity to discuss various categories that we may create regarding potential surplus property and whether or not we will entertain selling any of it.
Whoever likes to second that motion, would you repeat that?
I second what you said.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on postponing this issue? All in favor of postponing the issue, please say aye.
Hi.
Motion passes unanimously. I don't see any no votes. Are there any? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Before we move on to our council reports, I am interested, my understanding was if this was going to be considered, that both property owners would be given the opportunity to purchase. I heard Mr. Jones right. It was only,
So in the.
you want to step up here, Scott?
So the declaration refers in the whereas statements to the genesis of the problem or the genesis of like the reason that you're seeing it in front of you, but doesn't indicate who that property would be given to for sale. So like you had said earlier, it's two different issues. One is whether or not the city has determined this to be surplus. The other is the direction to go once it has been determined to be surplus. So it was our intention that that would be offered to sale, for both parties. And essentially right after the council meeting happened that we discussed this, I gave Mr. Jones a call and just talked to him about the potential option for that. That having been something that came up just from the podium while we were discussing the key shed the first time a few weeks ago. So I think that's the clarification, is that I didn't intend, and if it was written that way, I apologize, but I didn't intend the surplus document to state there's only one property owner who would have opportunity.
John, did you receive from Councilmember Barker a report on Parks and Recreation since he's not here? Did anyone receive that from him?
So me and him discussed it a little bit, in part in context with what Susan Clemens mentioned earlier. The idea that Bill Barker Park Committee is active, they're doing activities. We're trying to help get the word out, and he will continue to report back to the council on what's happening. As far as the recreation and parks or aquatics go, the pool's no longer open. They're putting the cover on it. They're repairing it again. We repair it every year with a sewing machine made for repairing cells, if you can believe it, because it needs the industrial strength to get through that canvas. And then recreation football's underway. If you go down by Oaklawn on the weekends, you will see and hear lots of excited parents. And that's what we've got.
Councilmember Swanson?
I just had a question about the wildflowers that will be planted this weekend. Are those just,
Not this weekend, it's
15.
well, on
But-
the
but,
8th,
yeah.
sorry, yeah.
The 15th.
So I went and walked the property with the Bill Barker Park Committee, and we talked about the areas. Down in the hollows will be the natural grasses, seeds. And we're really talking about wildflowers up mostly outside of the hollows, up on the chicken coop hill. Well, right now it's just some not dead grass, but grass that goes dormant fairly early in the summer and lays over it. It'll be that area where most of the wildflowers will end.
And it's true wildflowers, they won't be irrigated or anything like that. There's no irrigation system being put in.
The plan is to get them watered, to get them set, but then there would not be sprinklers and things like that in that area.
How are they going to water and set them?
Running a hose from a secondary water meter or a secondary bib that we have in the area.
Okay,
But I think they're talking like 200 or 300 feet of hose. to get
so they'll have, what, a week to get those watered? Because water gets turned off on the 15th.
right? So, but a lot of it'll
That's
be,
when they're planting them.
a lot of it'll be relying on the natural moisture from the winter to get them set and going.
And that project's on the 8th, correct?
Yes.
Or okay.
Well, the cleanup is on the 8th and then they're planting on the 15th.
Yeah.
Was what I understood from Susan.
Oh, so they'll have no water. Okay. That answers
All
my question.
natural, all natural. All
And,
natural.
and one thing that committee, as I was talking with one of the I don't know, if you call them leader, whatever, one of the people who's helping organize the committee. I've given them the task of coming back to the city with a detailed landscape plan, similar to what you saw tonight. That gives some specifics, plants, locations, benches, everything, and they are working on that. So, in fact, I know Susan's been doing a lot of the scribe work for that kind of stuff to get it in place.
I think additionally, Councilmember Swanson, as you know, I've been fairly firm on them having, before there's much development going on there, reserve funds to maintain that. One of the things I'm concerned about, John will tell you that I'm really interested in getting a maintenance plan in the city of things that need to be maintained, because apparently, John can correct me if I'm wrong here, we now have numerous parking lots in our parks and other areas that have not been maintained properly, that are now popping up for maintenance, and a little bit more significant maintenance than we would hope. But I think we need to start planning a routine maintenance things, so these things don't pop up on a surprise, because I don't think it's just one parking lot, John, is it? It's discussions with you, it's numerous parking lots, including the parking lot down at the aquatic center. So we do have some issues coming up there, but I think part of our financial plan was to have maintenance funds So that's why I think it's important in this area that those funds are there, so we don't end up having a good thing turning into a bad thing, you know what I mean?
Just one further question on the,
Mhm.
John, as you mentioned, the plans, detailed plans coming forward. Will that include some engineering to make sure it meets public infrastructure standards? Because it is a public park.
Yes, anything that would be concrete, all the way up to turf will have a specific design standard.
Sprinkler
for-
systems,
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Anything else, John?
Nope.
I would like to maybe just add to that. I've asked Council Member Barker to be the point person on Cherry Days with our citizen committee. That being his assignment. We do have a committee put together that'll be chaired with vice chairs so that we have continuous ongoing opportunity for the development of Cherry Days. The plan is that they will bring to us, this committee will bring to the council an outline of Cherry Days that would be approved by this council. And once that approved, then we would turn the citizens loose to comply with that plan. The city will allocate a certain amount of funds to be spent on Cherry Days. But that is in the process. They have started to meet. John has informed me that based upon the structure and how that'll be done, it does not have to be public meetings, but we'll surely try to keep the citizens aware of what's going on, which would include, they'll come back with a recommendation of where the parade should be held and some of those things. Once the council approves that plan, then, it's, we'll rely on them to make sure things happen. Okay. All right. Councilmember Dalpass, do you have anything to report to us on planning and building?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out how good the timing is to get the Village of Prominence Point rolling right now. As I previously reported last month or last time I did a report, the single family home building applications have fallen quite quickly because of interest rates and the economy. And so I think we're actually pretty fortunate that this project is starting at the time that it is, because it will keep our building department very busy and very engaged and have plenty to do. So I think we need to be seeing those positives, even though sometimes a citizen will say, oh, we don't want more multi-housing and it's just more. I totally get that, but it is fortunate timing for us as a city, in my opinion. The other thing is, I just wanted to say, as far as building goes, pardon our dust for the public safety building. The foundations are starting right now. So things are you're going to see things taking shape really quickly. So we're very excited to see that. And that's about all I have tonight.
Thank you. And may I just add to that, John, correct me if I'm wrong, that we've asked Nate to kind of be the contact person and oversee the construction of that from the city's standpoint. Is that correct, Nate Davis?
So he is helping us. Yeah.
And, yes, I think that what we're seeing here is we have basically 3 projects that have been previously approved years ago that probably will start moving forward. We've got obviously Prominence Point. Patriot Point continues to develop as we saw tonight. And then Cooperstown hopefully will move. John, I don't know if you've had a chance to talk with Ogden City's attorney yet at all.
No,
about
they haven't reached out to me yet.
Okay, might be good for us to reach out. I do have a letter from the developer saying they're ready and willing to move forward. So I will also make contact with those folks to see where we're at. Council Member Swanson,
Yes, sir.
would you like to report on finance?
You bet. Council, we are 17% of the year has elapsed. We are a little ahead in revenue, in our fund revenue collection, 19.5%. Our expenditures are coming in at 14.8%. So again, our departments continue, as they always do,
to be very frugal in their expenditures. We also received the other half of our ARPA dollars. So about $1.2 million came in that'll be used primarily for the water tank project that we've identified. We did receive additional B and C road funds. We received a total of $953,000. Those are the funds that we use to maintain our streets. The original budget that we anticipated was about 800,000, so we got about 20% more, which is a good thing. And as you drive around town, you know that will be consumed quickly as we continue to maintain our streets and roads. Just for information, our 2023, our current budget for B and C road funds is 850,000. The audit's going well. The field portion of the audit, the field work will be on the 6th and 7th of October. So we'll beginning to see some of the things shake out from the audit moving forward. And then if you look at the screen there, we did receive our first month, July's tax came in at 334. There you go. The budget was 320, so we're just slightly above that. John, can you scroll down to the, you can see, ignore that precipitous drop. That is
It's
just
not connecting to a point.
that's not connected to anything. It's just an artifact. And so you can see we are just slightly above what we projected or budgeted for 2023, and just a little bit above, not horribly gigantic, but we are comfortably above where we were this time last year. Hopefully the trend continues. I've given up trying to guess what it's going to do. We'll see the next time it comes in and we get the next data point.
So I think we're about 4% above budget.
About 4% above, right?
About what we budgeted.
Which was a flat sales
Yeah.
tax.
Yeah, so about 4%. But it will yet to be seen. You continue to hear more and more about recessionary talk and what's going on. I have had the opportunity to see kind of what's happening in some of the major sales in our city. And it's getting more and more interesting.
That's all I have there.
Good reports. Thank you very much, council members. I'll now move on to item number 11. Do we have any further public comments this evening?
Again, I just want to make a quick comment. When I brought this issue a year ago,
Need your name.
it's Corey Jones, North August. A name that will go down everything. But I just want to make a comment. When I brought this to the attention of the city and just was curiosity about it, one of the things that was commented to me about the sheds that were across from the car wash on Washington that was put there took many months to move. And so I respect the fact that these things take time. So in regards to number 9, I would just ask, and based on Ruby's expectations, that a timeline for the decision around this assessment, which I agree, I think it's the right approach to look at it from a macro perspective because it makes more consistent decisions along the way. I just would ask and encourage that potentially there would be a timeline set for that.
See, Mr. Head shaking his head, so we'll bid that.
Danny Cochran, North Ogden. So I just want to thank you all for being patient with me through my discussions up here about Prominence Point. When I first started coming and commenting, I was really angry and I was frustrated, and sometimes I was a little bit less than courteous, and I apologize for that, but I appreciate how much I think you have all listened to how frustrating it's been for the residents, how tired of being patient they had gotten. And so we all, I think, appreciate all the pressure you put on all of the developers involved in this. I especially appreciate you holding them to a time frame tonight, because that's been really frustrating. It's like every promise we were given, there was a tentative date, and then when that date approached, it was 6 months later, and when that date approached, it was 6 months later. So this is actually tying them down, and seeing the demeanor of these developers compared to what we saw before, I feel like I can have faith in them. I feel like maybe they're trustworthy, and they have both said to me, call me, I'm willing to listen. Our previous developer absolutely wouldn't even give his phone number, wouldn't answer an email, nothing. So I know all of my neighbors aren't going to be happy with everything that was approved tonight, but I am very happy, and I appreciate all the work, all the pressure you put on them, and all of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Goodness, me again. Brenda Ashdown, North Ogden. I'm thrilled to hear that there is a Cherry Days committee. I think that's an excellent idea. I'm excited to hear that go forward. I'm just curious. I know that Tiffany has resigned. I'm curious how the Parks and Rec is going forward. As I understand, there's not been hiring to replace her. Can you tell me how that looks? Yes, no?
Yeah, we can tell you on that is this point in time, we've kind of reorganized that. We've consolidated the maintenance of the parks with Public Works. We found that, Public Works would pull up and mow the basins, and 10 minutes later, Parks would show up and mow the parks. We had kind of duplication of maintenance, and so we have consolidated that. John has, as basically our chief operating officer of the city, has kind of reorganized that. So at this point in time, unless council feels significantly different, we are not posting that position. We want to wait to see if this organization works. We have had some comments. I appreciate you bringing this up, Brenda, of closing that facility. It's literally not closed. We have all the maintenance and things over there, but our goal is to try to make it easier for the citizens to get answers. So we've had a goal of consolidating certain aspects of the city in one place so people can come to this building and take care of their business. So we have moved Teresa over here. And she is now part of the group here. So that building is still being utilized from the standpoint of, equipment for sports and park maintenance equipment. But at this point in time, John, correct me if I'm wrong, we are not posting to rehire that position until we see if the reorganization works to be more efficient and effective in the city. We are interviewing this week for someone that would help with activities on a part-time basis to continue on those things that are important to the citizens. So that's the current status. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Thank you.
When I first made a comment and I was asking about if there's enough people to vote, I wanted to know I'm not quite as dumb as I sounded. When I said, if two vote against one, is that a tie? I realize that's not a tie.
Well, it depends on if you count them as full votes. I mean, if you're looking at maybe half votes,
It's all equal credit in government.
they do everything possible to prevent the mayor from voting. That's a tradition.
It's usually when somebody abstains, then we have a.
Okay, anyone else, comments, John, online? Anyone? All right. I appreciate your comments this evening. Council, earlier we did have public comments, and we kind of said we would try to answer those, giving some thought to that during the meeting. Do any of you want to address any of the questions that were asked earlier, or John, you're kind of pointing or waving your wand or what?
My wand. We did have someone raise their hand.
Oh, let's go with someone who raised their hand. I'd love to hear from them.
We have Susan Kilborn.
Let's hear from Miss Kilborn.
Great meeting tonight, guys, and happy Tuesday night. I have two comments that are completely independent from anything discussed tonight, but I have this burning need that I need to share with you. The first one is, as we all who are in our homes or are going home tonight, with the safety of our environment here tonight and our beautiful weather, I hope everybody, if you pray, will say a prayer for the people of Florida who are facing horrific conditions. The second thing that's really I need to get off my chest is very short. Phil, you sparkle in turquoise.
Susan, what have you been drinking?
Have you had your eyes checked lately?
No, you know what? Actually, I gave up wine 6 weeks ago. You're getting the real deal here every time.
All right. Okay.
Oh, my goodness.
I think you made it blush, Sue.
Anything else, Susan?
No, you guys are great. Thanks so much. I just like to leave you all with a little levity.
We appreciate you always joining us, so. Okay, John, anyone else?
Nope.
All right, thank you for those who have participated this evening. We'll now move on to council, mayor, or staff comments. Council, do you have anything else you've heard from the citizens that needs to be brought to this group's attention? Councilmember Dalpas?
I just have an update. I just wanted to let everyone know I serve on the senior board, and we've come to somewhat of a resolution on the community band. The community band will be starting practice on Thursday evenings at 7:30 p.m., which is a half an hour beyond what they were starting to file in on. So we're going to try our best to keep them honest and make sure that that's what's happening. In the long term, there is the possibility that there's going to be a community, I don't know exactly what it's called, John, but in the public safety building, there will be some space that is available for community events and meetings, etc. There might be a chance that the community band can use that space, and it might further resolve this issue that we've had with the senior center. So I'm very excited about that. And then I just also wanted to, I mean, I don't want to beat this topic down, but on the property at 600 East that we've been considering for surplus, in that situation, I'm just not very interested in selling the property. I feel like it's dragged on forever, and I feel like they created a shed in a space that it shouldn't have been. They didn't have a building permit. There's all these different things that factor into it. And so I wish Corey was still here so he could hear what I'm saying, but that's how I feel at this point. So I'm grateful that the staff is going to be looking at it and we look at it more, but it's cycled for way too long, and that's just kind of where I'm at.
All right, well, we look forward to you exercising your vote. Anyone else? Councilmember Ekstrom?
Yeah, so just a couple of things along the same lines with the selling the surplus property. It's like, you just don't. You know, I did go back and watch the meeting, even though I wasn't here. I watched it on YouTube, and I kind of got a feeling that kind of the direction we were taking was that, yeah, they might be able to continue to use it, but the way that we could, that it could be structured would be so cost prohibitive for them to leave it there that they would just rather take it down. And that kind of gave me a warm feeling in my heart, because I agree with Corey. I just they didn't check the rules. They just plopped it down. And if you pull somebody over, ignorance of the law is no excuse, correct?
Correct.
So, don't, and don't give squatters rights. So that's just my little 2 cents on there. The other thing that I was talking about was, we've had residents come in that want, a pool cover or pickleball courts. And it's great to kind of think of that idea and to just kind of say, yeah, wouldn't that be nice? But there's a lot of research and a lot of kind of creative energy that has to go into even making that happen. And so, if that's something that you want, get together with your friends that also want it and come to us with an actual plan on what resources are needed. And, do more of the legwork if that's something that you're really interested in. You know, because there's, you know, that really tells us how interested people are, is how willing are they to put into their own, you know, their own resources toward it. So that's kind of just a few things that I've been
Okay,
mulling
thank you.
over.
Well, and you may have missed this, but I think it was Blake, Councilmember Severing, indicated that someone has stepped up to say they will donate the cement for pickleball courts. So I've asked John and Councilmember Barker to see if there's a place that we could do that. Once, if we can establish where that may take place, then obviously we can get plans in place to do that. So they are looking at see if there's a spot. I think that's a generous comment by someone to say they donate the cement. And I think we've had that same comment on getting people involved. And John and myself, he's probably getting tired of hearing this, but you know, we've committed to have the citizens raise $75,000 for the amphitheater to match the city and ramp. That's probably not going to happen unless somebody takes charge of that. I know Councilmember Swanson offered to donate $74,999, but we need $75,000, and it's just not going to happen on its own.
Not
So
until you tell me I sparkle in turquoise.
I guess we won't be getting $74,999. But I've asked John to identify someone in the city. And so if anyone has ideas of who could take on that project,
Kevin has the extra dollar.
talk to John. We've thrown out a couple names, but I just, to your point, Councilmember Extra, things just aren't going to happen if no one's in charge. And so we've had citizens come and talk about, you know, outside of the art and make sure the amphitheater is in a place that it can be properly used. Now's the time for them to step up. Pickleball courts, we've had a lot of comments on that. Now is the time for people to step up. So I think those are good points, and thank you. Anyone else with comments? Councilmember Swanson.
Yeah, council, just to be aware, looking forward and public, on November 1st, we will be having a discussion, a work session where we will be discussing parks and recreation. And it's going to start from a very philosophical standpoint where we talk about, is it even government's responsibility to be providing parks and recreation? And then I have a whole list of questions that follow that. If so, how much and what and where and when, and what's considered recreation? What's considered a park? Should it all be a pay to play? Should it be partially subsidized? To what degree should it be subsidized if it's partially subsidized? So it's going to be a very philosophical discussion. And from that, then we will be able to inform ourselves as to how we move forward in the city with parks and recreation. One of the exercises that I hope we'll be able to complete in that first night, so be thinking of this, is one, in your mind, what is the definition of a park versus what is the definition of recreation? Okay, and so we need to have some ideas of what you picture when you think of a park and what you picture as what you think of as recreation. And that includes all public facilities. We need to ask ourselves, is the senior center a park or is it a recreation facility? Because it's not administration or anything else. It has a specific purpose. And so anyway, that's coming on the 1st. We hope to have plenty of citizens here to give their input on parks and recreation, the impacts. We'll be asking for comments from our police chief and some of the, the research that's out there on the impacts that parks and recreation programs have from a public safety standpoint, from an overall community cohesion standpoint, all those kinds of things. But we'll be embarking on what will be quite an interesting conversation on November 1st.
Perfect. You know, I was just thinking about the comment Councilmember Dalpaz on the band practicing in the police department. That ought to be very stimulating for the officers. have the band in there playing while they're writing reports. The other thing is, Councilmember Dowd is that, we have billed, my understanding is we have billed Pleasant View based upon their usage of the senior center. And I think John will be working with their city manager on an interlocal agreement to describe, what that is and how that will work. So that is in the process, I think, also of taking place. I know the bill has been sent to them. I do believe they've been making some contribution to the Senior Citizens Trust Fund or whatever it's called, or 501c3. But now will be discontinued and we'll be just covering that. I think the other thing that's come up is, do we have Harrisville residents also utilizing the facility? Because we surely want to be fair and equitable to the usage of that. I know Councilmember Swanson has got a proposal to potentially talk about on that November 1st date. So, all right, staff. Anything? Joyce? John?
Just a few, I know I followed up with the council, but just for those in the public who have heard, I believe we've gotten Dr. Shute taken care of. Meaning that Eric has gone out and walked the property again and went through some of the things. We found out a few of the things he was concerned about had actually been done, but there were still a few things that we were able to finish up. We have not heard back yet on the insurance claim for the rocks that fell off of his sign from, he said it was vibrations. I don't know when we'll hear, but that might be a potential future staking issue. Then it did go out in the utility bills, the leaf truck schedule, as well as a website where people can go for more information on the city website. The cleanup does start next week for those of you, so watch for that information. We usually go, I guess it starts this week because we go Saturday to Saturday. So that's going on. We did follow up with the chief and the engineer on the striping up at 400 at Washington and 3100 North. And the recommendation is not to change the striping up there or change the striping throughout all the city for all intersections that are similar. And I think the recommendation is to not change that striping and just remind people of the rules. That's it.
Okay, thank you, John. Just a comment in closing. I would just like to say, how pleased I am with the council as they look at the ramifications of decisions that are made long-term versus just short-term. I think that's really important that we understand the decisions now that are being made, potential situations that could create in the future, and that we're planning to make sure we're maintaining and that we're financially able to maintain our facilities and our parking lots, so that we have a plan and that we're financing that, so it just doesn't all of a sudden come up on us. But there's some comments that have been made about things in the past, and I would just say we learn from those things, and as we learn from those, we get better. We're not going to be perfect, but as we learn from things that maybe could have done better in the past, we can't focus on that, but we will make sure that we remember those things as we make decisions going forward. So I'm really pleased that the council is looking at those things long-term. Not that they haven't been before, but I think we're just putting more emphasis on making sure that we're planning for those expenditures so we don't get surprised, because I think we do have some things coming up. The parking lot over here that has to be paved, that was committed to when the library was expanded. When was that? 2017. We have a lot of parking lots and playgrounds that need to be done, and it's going to be good to get on rotation so that we can probably plan for those things. So I just wanted to compliment and appreciate all the work staff puts in. It's really sometimes difficult for the public to kind of see what goes on behind the curtain, so to speak. But there's a lot of things that go on that make the city run, and I just want to acknowledge the department heads and the staff for that. Did you have a motion to adjourn, council members?
No, you jogged my recollection now.
Oh, okay, go
I'll
ahead.
make it quick. It's a clarification on the leaf truck. It will be going through neighborhoods the day after trash pickup.
Correct.
So for those who have Saturday pickup, it will be coming on Monday, not Sunday, correct?
Correct. So Saturday and Friday will be handled on Mondays, although the leaf truck most likely will operate on Saturdays,
Okay,
but there's no guarantee that Friday will get picked up on Saturday because of the schedules.
okay.